Kevalam Baba, Nam Kevalam Baba, Nam Kevalam Baba, Nam Kevalam.
Okay, yes, here we are. Okay, namaskar, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to a Wednesday meditation session. Feel free to announce yourself in the comments so I know who is here, so it's not completely anonymous. Well, I hope everybody's doing well today and you're looking forward to an experimental meditation. I'll actually do something today that I've never tried before, so that's always nice. Hi, Koda and Chitra. So last week we looked at the practice of pratyahara. The practice of pratyahara. So pratyahara, the ability to willfully reorient the mind to a more expanded state of consciousness. And today I'd like to pick up on this word expanded, expansiveness, expansion. And the word in Sanskrit is vistara. So let me put that up on the screen here, vistara. And at least according to our tantric philosophy, vistara is something innate to all human beings, that we're all yearning for some sort of expansion, and often it gets misplaced. So, for example, a gambler might be thinking in her or his mind about the possibility of coming into extreme wealth and all of the freedom that is going to give. So there's an imaginary expanded future of wealth. Or maybe somebody who retreats from the urban environment into nature and buys a farm is thinking about the expansiveness of the freedom of being able to construct one's own life according to one's own dream. An activist is certainly thinking about expansion to overcome draconian laws that may be preventing human beings from expressing their God-given freedoms. So this then is something that in one form or another, every human being seeks. Jung had a really nice way of talking about this, Carl Jung. He gave an example whereby, let's say that a guy is looking for the ideal partner, and he gets jealous because he sees his ideal partner with somebody else, or what he thinks to be his ideal partner with somebody else. So this is a very, very narrow, self-centered way of thinking. If I can't get what I want for myself and somebody else has it, then I get very jealous. In this expanded state of mind, when one sees what is the ideal partner with somebody else, one celebrates, because one thinks, oh my goodness, humanity is benefiting because this person is with that person and they go so well together. It benefits the totality of human society. So we don't often think in this way. We often think about ourselves first. But this is the spiritual way of thinking, the expanded way of thinking, the Vistara way of thinking, if you will, that one has this identification with the whole. And if the whole benefits in some way, then we are happy. The British author Pico Iyer, he put this in very interesting terms. He said, do you want to build your house on a foundation of soul or of soil? So he's making a reference to this aspect of, are we going to be materialistic, thinking about ourselves and identifying ourselves with our material possessions, which puts us in a state of insecurity because we're then worried about losing them? Or are we going to expand our consciousness so we build ourselves upon soul consciousness, which can never be taken away from us? If we identify ourselves as soul consciousness expressing itself into the world through us, then we are secure. So expansiveness is essential if we want to have peace of mind, if we want to be at ease with ourselves. One time I was in Houston Airport here in the States, and I had a turban on at the time. There were some Southern Baptists going through the airport, and they looked over at me, and I could see that they were disturbed by me. And one of them came over, and I was astonished. She said to me in a rage, "You're possessed by the devil." And I was taken aback, and I really didn't know what to say. And obviously I was threatening to him. So this is another challenge that we have as human beings, is that we get into this very limited sense of polarity. It's me versus the others. So in his mind, I guess, I was evil in some way. So he's got this polarity about the world, good and evil, righteousness and unrighteousness. And I was on the other side, and so I was a threat. One who is expanded, one who is in the state of Vistara, is able to embrace both sides of the polarity. There's a great story from Africa, actually from Botswana, about this. The young people in this particular village wanted to test the wise elder. So what they did, they went to him, and one of them had put a live bird in his hand. So he went up to the elder and asked the elder, "Is this bird dead or alive? Is the bird dead or alive?" So this is a choice now of polarity, right? Extreme polarity. Either it's dead or it's alive. So the wise elder thought for a while. And of course, it's a difficult situation, because if he says the bird is alive, then the youth would crush it and say, no, look, it's dead. And if the elder says the bird is dead, then the youth would open his hand and actually the bird was alive and it would fly away. So on either side of the polarity, the elder would be wrong. So the elder thinks about this a little bit and finally says, very intelligently, the answer is in your hand. The answer is in your hand. So that neutralized the whole situation. So the elder was able to go beyond the limitation of polarity to see more than, in this case, the life and the death. And this then is our challenge as human beings, and something we're going to explore actually in our meditation to come. How do we, it's not just transcend polarity, but accept polarity. Maybe the acceptance is the transcendence. Let's give an example from our society. We have a polarity of male, female, masculine, feminine. Now, formally, maybe those on the masculine side would see themselves as superior. Like one side is better than the other side. There's a value judgment placed on this polarity. These days, it's getting so much better. So it's not a sense of seeing one side as an adversary. It's rather seeing that both are complementary. We need the masculine and the feminine in order to function. Each brings a certain flavor that is essential. So then we transcend the limitation of holding on to one side of the spectrum, and we open our mind to embrace both. There's in society today an improvement in most places regarding the gay, straight sexual identification paradigm. At least where I live, it's just two different ways of many that human beings can express themselves. So the mind has expanded beyond the limitation of one or the other. When it comes to young and old, I think to some extent we might be making a regression. That maybe young people see old people as less productive, less capable, less sharp, perhaps mentally. And sometimes we find ageism, that we need to do more these days when it comes to building bridges between the generations. But it's only when we can expand our minds that we can embrace all of the possibilities of human expression. We are in a relational world by virtue of everything being polar, right, on a spectrum with extreme poles on one side or the other. Clearly, everything then is in relationship to the other. We cannot exist in isolation. If I have a chair in my room, the chair only exists because it's in relationship with the wall. The roof only exists because it's in relationship with the foundation. You can't have one without the other. And so then we need to figure out how we create relationality in an expanded way. Let's give an example. So we have good and we have the bad. Clearly there's a relationship here. And often people are in a relationship negatively. They don't want anything to go wrong. They always want to be on the side of life has to be good. But the problem there is that when things are good, there's the worry that maybe the good times are going to end. It's an unhealthy relationship. And when things aren't so good, Sometimes we think, oh, these days are never going to end. Again, it's a negative thinking, because everything comes to an end. And so again, the relationship between the good and the bad is not healthy. How can we make it healthy? We have to expand the mind beyond both. A friend of mine in Denmark, he has this formula: good plus bad equals God. So there's a third entity here, a third entity, which is, he's calling it God, but we can call it cosmic consciousness. So if one is able to expand the mind into this greater sense of consciousness, then one is not threatened by the good or the bad. And in good times, one can say, thank you so much for these times. Let me celebrate to the best of my ability. And when times aren't so good, thank you so much for bringing these bad times to me. Maybe I can learn something from this. Or maybe I failed in something. Thank you so much for bringing the failure to me. This is feedback from the universe that maybe I need to change direction. So one puts a positive spin, excuse me, on both sides of the polarity, as opposed to, excuse me, as opposed to being fearful when one is on one side that the other side is going to come knocking on the door. This is the wonderful benefit of meditation, that we are able to expand beyond the limitations of polarity, not to crush polarity. We're in a relative world, it exists, but to be able to embrace all aspects, all points on a spectrum. We can look at other examples like life and death. Many people are fearful of death, and they may live life without being able to fully settle into life, because always there's the underlying concern about dying. But actually, if one wants a formula, maybe life plus death equals evolution. There has to be death in order for there to be advancement. We need the young to come into the world with their new energy, their new ideas, their new perspectives. Let's take joy and sadness. So we love being joyful, it's fun. And when we're sad, well, we want to get out of that state as quickly as we can. Pain is something that we seem to be increasingly intolerant of, which is a shame, because in the pain or in the sadness, I guess sadness being emotional pain, there's a very special reflective space that we can enter. And so if one wants a formula, one could say joy plus sadness is maybe gratitude. Can also be evolution. And so I think you see what I'm getting at, that we embrace polarity from a much more expanded perspective. And this is Vistara. It's not a denial, it's an embrace. It's an embrace from a place of spiritual security, let's put it that way. And this then brings peace. Otherwise, it's really hard to be at peace if one's always concerned about losing something. When one has expanded, then one's coming from a place of fullness. There's nothing to lose. One can't lose one's soul. One can lose one's iPhone, but the soul is there forever. It's eternal. One can forget, perhaps, the soul, but one cannot lose it. So that being said, let's enter then the spiritual practice itself. Maybe I'll explain a part of the meditation before we get there. In the world of yoga, there's something called Yoga Nidra. It's a practice that has different, I guess, forms, but primarily it's about just this the ability to go beyond the opposite. So in a yoga nidra session, one might go beyond, say, heat and cold. One could even go beyond the polar opposites of emotions. So today we'll look at fear and courage and anger and calm. And we'll look at those, we'll feel those in the mind, and then we'll expand the mind beyond them. So in the case of, say, anger, well, maybe one feels a ripple of anger in the mind, but the mind is so expanded that the anger doesn't possess the mind. This is basically mindfulness. The mindfulness practice is about being in that expanded state. So one is not under threat from the emotion, but can rather direct the emotion as energy in a constructive way. So we're going to experiment, and I've never done this actually in a meditation before, so it's going to be interesting. We'll experiment with then taking the periphery of the mind beyond the emotional polarities that we experience. That's the first part. Then the second part, it's something I normally do in nature to feel this expansion of the mind. So let's say one is looking at a horizon, standing on a beach. So by looking at the horizon, the mind has gone to the horizon. So a part of one's awareness is on the beach, and a part of one's awareness is then at the horizon. So there's this expanded space that the mind occupies between the horizon and oneself on the beach. And then one can stretch that space in all directions. So I find this is a wonderful thing to do in nature when one has a vast vista. So we'll do this in meditation. We're going to take the mind to a star, and we'll pin part of the mind there. And then we're going to take the mind to another star, and we'll pin it there. And so we'll do this with different stars. So it's like we've stretched it out, and we pinned it to all these stars, to expand it. And then we'll do something else with it too. So I hope you find that a little intriguing, and we'll see what happens. But obviously, this is a symbolic way, right, of expanding the mind. I mean, life itself puts us in situations where we have to learn, and that learning gives expansiveness. So, for example, let's say I have a prejudice about a certain nationality, and I get to meet somebody from that nationality. I think, wow, this guy's pretty cool, just like me. So then my mind's expanded. Let's say I'm in a situation where I have a choice. I can either help somebody, the Good Samaritan situation. I can help somebody, or I can walk past. Let's say somebody's fallen in the street. I can walk by, or I can help. Now, when I help, I feel really good inside. My heart expands, and maybe people praise me, and I feel, wow, yeah, this is wonderful. So I'm in an expanded state, as opposed to walking by, which is a constricted state. It's all about just me. So as we go through life, we get tested, and if we pass the test well, we experience maybe a little bit more expansion and a little bit more. And so life teaches us to expand, and then the meditative practices we do also help the mind to expand. So it's not one or the other, both are complementary. Learning from life, expanding through the experiences that the universe gives us, as well as working with our minds in meditation to seek and maintain an expanded state of consciousness. Okay. Well, I always give it the meaning of Bhavanam Kevalam, according to the topic of the day. So Kevalam would be the maximum state of expansiveness, a state beyond which further expansion is not possible. Baba is the sweetness that one derives from that, but also the sweetness that helps one enter the state of Kevalam, of maximum expansiveness. So the sweetness, using those previous examples, of seeing the beauty of a blooming flower, the sweetness of opening one's heart in service, the sweetness of understanding that the other is not a threat. The other is simply another way that the universe expresses itself through a human being. Feel free to sing along or listen along. The chant also is a way to lose oneself. When we lose ourselves, we get expanded. We can be in a flow state, doing artwork or maybe playing a sport. We lose ourselves, we get expanded. When we sing, we can lose ourselves, especially when we sing in a choir with others. When we chant together, we get expanded because our small sense of individuality is blown open. Baba, Babanam Kevalam, Kevalam Babanam, 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 Babanam Kevalam Kevalam Bhavanam Bhavanam 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 Kevalam Kevalam Bhavanam. Let's meditate. First of all, with the eyes closed, attune yourself to your breath. Settling within with every calming exhalation. Become aware of your mind and with your awareness, explore it spatially. Is there a bottom to the mind? A top to the mind? A left side, a right side, a front side, a back side? Is there a point where there's an end to the mind? Let's do the same with heart. Heart in the sense of love as a state of being. Is there a top, a bottom, a left, a right? Or is love boundless? As you still settle with breath, feel your potential for expansiveness. Let's explore emotion. Coming to the mind space. And if you could feel courage, Maybe your imagination will find a time of courage in your life, and you will feel the feeling of courageousness. And then move the mind away from courage towards, on the other side of this polarity, fear. So this second point in your awareness is the point of fear. Maybe find a time in life when you were fearful, so you can feel the feeling of fear. And now imagine that you have expanded your consciousness. Within this expanded consciousness are 2 points, one representing courage, the other one fear. But you are much greater than either of them. You contain them, but you are much more than courage and fear. Let's now bring the mind to anger. Let the mind shrink a little bit to enter the feeling or the memory of anger. And then create another point at some distance from anger, which is calm equilibrium. Calmness. Let the mind, let the consciousness expand to easily hold both points, the point of anger, the point of calmness. Yes, they exist within me, but I am much more than them. As if your expanded consciousness is at peace with all aspects of yourself right now. let's come to the second expansion practice. Imagine you're sitting on the moon. You can see Earth. And you can see stars, billions of them. Let the mind feel the seemingly infinitely expanded universe. Select one star and let your mind or your awareness travel there and pin a part of your mind there. Then let your awareness travel to another star in another part of the universe. And pin the mind there. And another star. Pin the mind there. And another star. Feeling then that the mind is stretched, expanded out to those 4 stars. Try to take the mind further out. As if the mind is seeking the outer reaches of the universe. Almost as if the mind has become a cosmic mind within which the universe exists. As if everything that exists is within the scope of your awareness. We'll continue in silence now. On the inhalations, hold the fully expansiveness, the full expansiveness of the mind. On the exhalations, feel a becoming one with everything, a total identification with the whole. The inhalation, full expansiveness. The exhalation, oneness with the whole. If you have a mantra, feel free to use it too. In silence now. Imagine you're sitting back on the moon, looking at the earth. And you're looking at the country in which you live, the town in which you live, the house or apartment in which you live. And imagine you're looking at your life from this cosmic perspective. With the understanding that everything is in relationship to the other in some way. But also everything is in relationship to the greater universe. And maybe to bring heart and mind together from this expanded perspective, feel compassion towards yourself and all of the interacting aspects of life. Imagine now you're back in your room, in front of a screen, and when you are ready, please open your eyes. We were astronauts. We were space women and space men. We went off into space. So I'd be curious to get any feedback from that, actually, because that's a new meditative journey that I just experimented with. So any comments would be very helpful. I mean, there's no doubt that human imagination is something beautiful, and human imagination itself has no limits. If we can imagine something, then it can also come to pass eventually. So this activity, this meditation activity, was also a wonderful exercise just in imagination. Any feedback about that? Are you still on the moon? Sometimes it can be challenging if people don't have a visual imagination, so then it has to be a felt imagination. Not everybody is visual in orientation. Oh, that's nice. Tapasi in Vietnam is saying that when she was young, often the electricity cut out, and so she could see the stars, and she imagined traveling to the stars when she was young. Yeah, that's the beauty of the child, right? The child has no limits. The child can travel to the stars. So that was nice that the meditation brought back that memory that the child you could relive the journey to the stars through the meditation. Yeah. So, Limit Experience Media, how joyful to be in outer space. The perspective gave me a feeling of hopefulness. Exactly. This is one of the benefits of Vistara, of expansion, because we get caught up, right? The mind will shrink or wrap itself around a problem, around a certain emotion, around a dilemma. And it's when we see the expanded picture that we can then ease the sense of constraints or displeasure, unhappiness. And yeah, Tapasi, like jumping from one star to another. We are not skywalkers, we are star jumpers. And Sylvia in Brazil, if I understand the Portuguese, yeah, there's this sense of going to the infinite, of feeling infinity, because let's face it, we are birthed from the universe, right? We in our own lives, we talk about how the child can be very similar to the mother or father. We have a genetic inheritance. We have characteristics, personality traits that may come from parents. Given that we are all birthed from the universe, then I guess logically we could say, well, we have the qualities of the universe within us. And if the universe is seemingly infinite, then potentially we are also infinite. Yes, we have the limitations of a body and maybe a brain that doesn't have the processing capacity of the greater universe, but nevertheless, we have the seeds of infinity, the touch of infinity within us. Wonderful. So something to reflect upon. But I do recommend, when in nature, when you do have a horizon or you are looking at a star, you can easily feel the spaciousness of the distance between the star and the human brain. It's a wonderful way to just feel expansive possibility. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure to share this experiment with you today. I wish everybody well. Keep the process of expansion of mind and heart alive. Goodbye.